The more you judge others is the more that you judge yourself. Because when you start seeing the bad in others, you're training your mind to find the bad, not only in others, but in self. So that is what we're going to talk about today. Welcome to episode 90 of the Positivity Experience. Let's talk all about judgment. Check it out. Hey everybody, and welcome back to the Positivity Experience. It is your girl Lori, and I am super excited. I cannot believe I've been doing this for 90 episodes. That's right, 90. And we are going to talk all about judgment, and boy, is that needed. And something triggered it, and I'm going to talk to you about why we're doing this topic. Because originally I wanted to talk to you about something else, but this came up at the right time. So if you have joined the Patreon, I am recording this a little bit earlier than when you're hearing it. So if you've joined Patreon, I usually like to give you guys a shout out. But if you've joined it and I'm not giving you a shout out, it's because I really haven't seen it yet. But if you're interested in the Patreon, it is just the toolbox version of the podcast, which means I give you tools on whatever topic we're talking about. And you can always find that information in the show notes of anywhere that you're getting this podcast. In the show notes, it's like the description. The link is always right there if you choose to do so. But I want to jump into this about judgment, and I want to tell you where this came from. So the other day, Gwen Stefani was on, I think Jimmy Kimmel. She was on something. And I didn't watch that, but I seen it like, I don't know, somewhere Instagram or some TMZ, somewhere. I saw it on somewhere. And oh my God, were people dragging her for her, I guess they were saying how she doesn't look like herself. She's got too much plastic surgery. Oh my God, what did she do to herself? And as a person who also gets Botox and fillers, right? It wasn't a defensiveness though. It was a reminder that people really have nothing better to do than to look and judge other people. But when they do that, they do have other things to do. They absolutely do. See, unfortunately, judgment in general, it's part of the human nature. It's like a human body. You look at something and you judge it. That's normal. That's normal human behavior. Where it becomes problematic is not just accepting it just based in the judgment. So let's say someone is doing something that you don't like. Someone's wearing something, someone's voting a certain way, somebody's doing something that you don't align with, okay? And you go, oh, God, I don't like that. I don't understand why. Well, you don't have to understand why, number one. And number two, just because they're doing something different doesn't make it wrong for them. So you can look at it and say, do I align with this behavior, this position? If it is not something that you align with, that's perfectly fine. You're able to judge the situation to say, is this person or is this situation in alignment with how I feel or what my belief system is? If the answer to that question is no, let it be what it is. The amount of people who felt the desire and the need of entitlement to go down all her socials and just pick her apart. I can't believe you did this. You ruined your body. You ruined your face. You don't look like yourself. Why is that their business? It's not their business. It's not. You can have your opinion and go, okay, I probably wouldn't do that. Okay, maybe that's not something that I like, and maybe I would have done it differently, or maybe I wouldn't have done it at all. That's fine. You don't have to do it. But if somebody else does it, it's not your position to give your advice on that, unless somebody asks you and said, hey, what do you think of this? And you can say, well, it's not something that I would do. It's not something I personally would do, but you can do whatever you want. So there's some psychology behind this. Okay. And like I was saying in the trailer, the more you judge someone else, the judgment of others definitely is a reflection of self, because you are going to judge yourself, because now you have this false sense of perfectionism, which is not a thing, a false sense of right or wrong, good and bad, positive and negative. Yeah, those things exist, but that's black and white thinking. Okay, if this person isn't worshiping in the way I choose for them to worship, then they're wrong. But no, they're not. If this person isn't dieting the way that I diet, then they're wrong. If this person isn't dressing the way that I would dress, then they're wrong. That's not true. And think about that, because when you judge, boy, are you giving yourself so many hurdles to jump over. Because if you're sitting in judgment of other people, very often what you're judging about other people, you're going to try really hard not to do, or you're going to be hypocritical and do it anyway. So you have to understand that that can lead to a ridiculous amount of stress. And remember, that can give you high blood pressure, fatigue, you can have depression, you can have heart attacks, you have strokes. Like all these things come from trying to understand the reason someone else is responding a certain way, not responding a certain way, or doing something. Not everyone needs to give you their reason. And I've said this 100 times because the reason itself may not be enough for you. They may give you the honest reason. And you may think, well, that's a dumb reason. Well, but you don't get to judge their reason. And so, you have to understand judging others is absolutely, detrimental to your health. And so here's the thing, right? You have to remember to be who you are. So we'll talk about the judgment of others, but let's talk about the judgment of self, or when everybody else wants to start judging, because there will be certain people who don't just look at it, analyze the situation, accept it for what it is, and keep it moving. I mean, if anybody is on social media more than 5 minutes, you'll see instead of people going, this bit of content doesn't align with me, I don't like it, I'm going to scroll past or unfollow or unfriend or whatever, they feel the need to get negative and nasty. That's a reflection on them. Somehow or another, they feel as though they are entitled to an opinion on somebody else's socials. And that's just simply not true, right? That goes into ego. So to be able to stay true to yourself, you have to know you best. You have to know who you are. You have to know what makes you tick. You have to keep that into your mind. It's your perspective of yourself, right? When you are triggered, and I did a podcast last week on triggers, you don't avoid those triggers. You walk right into the fire of those triggers. You have to start desensitizing your triggers, right? Because if you're triggered by people's judgment of you, you're never going to be true to yourself, because part of you believes the narrative. A good way of knowing where you are in your healing journey and how to not prolong that journey, but really benefit from that journey, is to stop overthinking it. Stop overreacting to it. Allowing yourself to understand that when it happens, it is just a signal that those are the areas that you still need to work on for your own self-love. Because I promise you, when you have self-love, you will hear somebody's opinion, right? Cool. Do you align with it? Do you believe them? If you believe them, then you have to check yourself. Why do you believe them? Right. It's one thing to have constructive feedback. Somebody goes, oh, I don't know, that just didn't land right. Or I don't know. Constructive feedback is great because that's part of life. Like, that's what we do. That's how we grow, is from constructive criticism, is to allow yourself to sit in that space. But where it becomes problematic is where now you start veering out of your own business and you start jumping into everybody else's business. And you start trying to save the day, and you start trying to give people your own autobiography, and you give them your autobiography, meaning like, oh, wow, I had this situation with this person. I don't like this person. Well, just because you don't like them doesn't mean that I won't. And know that somebody else's judgment of someone else, if they're judging someone and they're telling you about it, and you're not willing to allow yourself to know that person or know the situation, and you're going to take somebody else's experience with it, now you have to check yourself again. And so this is why judgment becomes so problematic, because make sure that before you say anything about anyone, or you reach that level of judgment that you just can't seem to let it go, check your mirror, check yourself, and ask yourself if you are living the life that you want to live. Are you living a life for you, or are you people pleasing? Are you constantly angry? Are you constantly in a victim mentality? Are you constantly sitting in a state of worry? Okay, then if that's the case, check yourself. You don't want to start constantly, I don't understand why somebody does this. Their behavior is dumb. Okay, sometimes you're not going to be able to walk away. If you're at work or if you're in a certain place, unfortunately, there's not going to be people who are going to align with you left and right. And you have to understand that, because when you come, and there's people who come to like snap judgment, right? So we know, like, in snap judgment, basically that's just like, okay, well, I'm making a snap judgment by my own personal convictions, which means you're not even investigating further. When someone is sitting in judgment, and this could be you, this could be anyone else, is they are not sitting in a space of open mind. One of the things that I would say helped me the most in my entire profession is working with people all over the world, in all different religions, all different walks of life, all different economic statuses. It has been beautiful, because I want to know that. I want to know how certain people do in their religions. I want to know how people live. I want to know it, not to judge it, because I know that just my view, especially back then, now I have such a much broader view. But if your view is only this is what it is and this is right, this is wrong, and if you have grown up in a certain religion and you feel like you struggle, I have a podcast on religious trauma. I was raised Southern Baptist. That's a really big one, and it was a big trigger for me because it is, in my opinion and in my experience, it was extremely judgmental. And on me, right? Like not just judgmental of other people. Like if you didn't do this, then it was a problem. If you didn't do that, that was a problem. And again, if you're judging the situation and saying that's not healthy for me, that's not what I want, that's great. But don't sit there and try to break somebody down. Here's the beautiful thing to understand. When you break somebody down, you do not shine brighter. Quite frankly, you shine on your insecurities and people can see them. When you are sitting in judgment and you're sitting in gossip, I didn't say like you and your friends are sitting around and you're just having a little tete-a-tete and everything's just fine. I mean, when you're seriously sitting there in gossip and you're comparing, you're going, why would this person do this? And oh my God, this person is so wrong and I don't understand. You don't have to understand. And it is something that I keep repeating because it's so important. You have to be repetitive in order to sometimes achieve the absorbing of it. Just because you don't like it, just because you look at it as right or wrong, that's a form of positional thinking. And snap judgments are a form of positional thinking. Right, wrong, good, bad. Everything is black and white. And that's not true. Right? And anytime you make that judgment, you are accepting or rejecting someone. So you now, when you're sitting in judgment, again, from the space of like, I'm going to critique it, not just, is it something that serves me? But when you're sitting in a space, think about this. You're saying, I don't like what they've done. I'm rejecting them as a person. I'm rejecting the entire situation. Well, but that's not fair. You don't know what you're missing out on. But and like I said, if you utilize this and if you're honest with yourself, you'll be able to utilize that time that you feel the need to judge or the need that feel the need to be like, I don't understand why, fill in the blank. You'll be able to understand that that's a sign that you still have to work on self. We're going to do a little exercise over on the Patreon this week on this. But it's imperative because now that's judgment of others. Now I'm going to flip that and we're going to do judgment of self. Okay? Because we know about you judging other people. We've talked about it, and other people judging you. But what about when you judge you? You are judging you based on some narrative that you didn't come up with this narrative. Maybe you came up with it because of a childhood thing or something you saw on socials, which again, stop thinking that social media and what you see on social media is this real life that you have to aspire to, because 90% of it is not. Like, don't do that. 90% of it is not. Not everybody is going to sit there and wear their stuff on their sleeve. I do. It doesn't bother me. But some people want to have this image as though this is what that perfect life is. But the reality is perfect lives don't exist. So when you're looking at your judgment of self, I should be doing this. This should happen. I should say this. Why didn't I do this? I have to do this. I have to do that. Again, one thing to have goals. But when you start saying, oh, you're so stupid. Oh, you're so dumb. You did that again. Oh my God, what's wrong with you? You ate too much last night. You're never going to succeed at this. So now the judgment of yourself, FYI, no one on this planet, I don't care your worst enemy, no one will ever judge you harder or harsher than you will yourself. And you will not judge anybody else nearly. You'll judge them, but you won't judge them nearly as much as you judge yourself. So that's where you have to say, where is this coming from? Because it didn't just come out of the blue. Your self-judgments are coming from a place of fear of failure. And again, I'm always going to remind you, embrace failure. It is a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful thing. Mistakes, gorgeous. That's how we learn. You have to have them in order to grow. You have to have them in order to expand your success, whatever you deem as success. So when you're judging yourself and you're saying, I need to do this, especially when you're sitting in comparison. Oh, I should be married by now. I should have a different job by now. I should have gone through college by now. Oh, well, I guess I have to take another year of college. All my other friends are in a different space. I should have retired by now. Okay, stop. Based on whose timeline? You realize time's linear. This time is just fake. You are temporary. Everything that you stress about is temporary, including your existence. And when you can accept that piece of it, you start to look at things a little different. You want to utilize the time that you have above ground on this planet to be the best version of self. Be kind with zero expectation. Be kind, be empathetic, and do so without someone needing to give you something or say something or acknowledge you in return. Because now that's transactional. To be truly kind, and a lot of people say, oh my God, I have such a kind heart. Yeah, you do. But are you doing so and then getting your feelings hurt if it's not done in return? Then it's not totally without a little level of manipulation, even if it's unintentional. So this is why when you allow yourself to accept things and accept people, the amount of energy that you waste every single day and that you beat yourself up and you throw your head into the wall multiple times because you're trying to figure out someone's why. Why would they do that? Why would they act that way? Why would they say those things? Why would they respond that way? Why are you worried about that? Well, because I need to know. You don't need to know. Of course, there are some situations where you're like, okay, I'm paying the price over here for this. I hear you. But remember, you can't change the people around you, but you can change the people around you. Meaning, you can't actually change them, nor should you, but you can change the role in which they play in your life. Stop asking yourself, why can't somebody just do this? Or why are they doing this? And the same with self. Why aren't you doing this? Why aren't you? There's no productivity there. You can look at that and use it as a springboard for inspiration, but only if you go, okay, these are the areas I need to work on. That's cool. But if it isn't, and you're holding on to it, you're holding on to somebody else's voice. You're holding on to someone's voice who says you're not good enough, which, by the way, what is good enough to you? Because what's good enough to you might not be good enough to me. And you might be striving for something that you haven't even defined. How can you literally say, I'm not good enough based on what? Based on your mom? Well, you should never be good enough for somebody else. You should always be good enough for yourself. That's what you do, right? That's what you do, is you allow yourself to be in a space where you are good, quote unquote, enough for you, but develop your own idea of what being enough is. Because if you're worried about being someone's main priority, that's a big sign that you are lacking in self-love. And you will judge that. You will judge that. Well, I don't understand. I don't understand what they're doing. I mean, they can go out with their friends. Their friends are a priority. Certainly isn't me. Oh, wow. Okay, let's notch that back. So a lot of your judgments are going to come from a place of insecurity. And again, instead of beating yourself up and going, why do I do that? Again, it's a pretty natural, normal response. It's just knowing that it's good to understand, is this what I want to align with? And if it isn't, let it go and release it. You are not entitled to know someone's why and their actions. And it could be perfectly fine for them. If it's not for you, that's fine. You know, I mean, it's great to use I statements to assert yourself, right? You know, I am this way, I feel this way. That's fine. As long as you're using it in a space and you're utilizing it from a place where you can do so to benefit self. What you don't get to do is try to strive for some weird sense of perfection, which is non-existent. Perfection does not exist in this ever. In this world, in this realm, it doesn't exist. There is no golden standard for perfection. So you have to stop trying to reach it, because the more you try to be perfect, the more you're going to judge others. The moment you see someone, let's say you were a single mom, okay? I'm going to give you a scenario. You are not even a single mom. You're just at home. You're not a single mom. You're married. You're 26. You have kids. And your friend is 26. She's also a single mom, and her mom watches the kids every weekend. Now you sit in judgment and go, I don't understand. Like, she's out there running the streets. She has a kid. Why isn't she staying home? You are in the wrong for having to understand that why and inflict your belief on what she should be doing onto her. Okay, you can have an opinion because you're going to have a sort of judgment, right? But you can say, wow, okay, well, that's not really what I want to do. That's fine. Remember, the art of judgment and just being able to observe it and release it is key. Observe it, acknowledge it. You can have your own internal judgment on it, release it. Not look at it, judge it, now call your friend Tiffany and talk about how a horrible mother she is and how she's always out at the bar and you're at home and you would never do that. And then they're living their life like you are. So now the two of you are talking about how bad of a person this person is, but you're not that person. Are you guys both living your best lives? Are you doing the things that you think are right for yourself? Because if you are, then that's good enough. So you have to understand that when you are so quick to judge, right? That's the whole thing. When you're quick to judge, it's your brain is actually attempting to make some kind of sense of it. Like, well, why would they do that? So you make a snap judgment for it. But you're not always going to get the answer in which you seek. And that's why you say, why am I spending this energy on it? Now that goes into ego. That goes into ego. When you assume that how you look at someone, look down at someone, look across at somebody, if you assume that that is superior or you are superior in some way, yeah, that's ego. So you have to understand, well, what about when people judge you? I just told you it's also normal. But it's when they take it so far. And then some of what you think is judgment, you have to ask yourself, is it true? Well, I see how they look at me. Do you know what's going through in their head? You don't. Because if I'm in a thought loop and I'm like zoning out and you're standing in front of me, it's going to look like I'm staring at you. I don't even know that you're there. But in your mind, you're like, damn, why is she staring at me? What is wrong with me? I knew I shouldn't have worn this today. Now you've created a narrative that you don't even know to be real. And if you're worried about other people listening to what other people say, like I said before, let them. It is not your job to walk around and parade around town and explain why everybody else's judgment of you is wrong. Because how they feel about you is adequate and accurate to them. That comes with self-love and lowering the ego. Does take time. It takes time. It takes practice. And again, I'm going to give an exercise over on the Patreon that is very, very helpful. It's something to remind yourself of. But I need you to understand that the moment you are sitting in judgment is a good thing if you allow it to be. Not to the person, I'm not saying keep judging. I'm saying it's a good indicator of where you are in your journey or on your journey. Right? And some of it is going to be just natural. I told you, like habits in general, like your mind is going to go to the path of least resistance. So if for the last 25, 35, 55 years, you've been living in insecurity and judgment and all that stuff, if you honestly think you're going to listen to one podcast, go to 1 year worth of therapy, and then all of a sudden you're fine, well, that's just a ridiculous, outrageous idea of what healing is. No, this is a lifelong process. And it's taken you X amount of years to get to where you are today. And it may take you X amount of years to get out of that. But your brain knows how to function in the habit in which it's created. So just now, if you go back into the judgmental side of you, right? Well, that's easy for you. You've done that forever. So when you're like, okay, well, I got to stop. And, you do good when you're like cognizant of it and you're thinking and you're aware of it. But then the moment somebody says something or wears something, or you see something on socials, or Gwen Stefani goes and does whatever she feels like doing, and you feel judgmental, don't beat yourself up for it. It's just that's how you used to operate. So you be aware of it. Don't beat yourself up. Go, oh, I see what I was doing there. Awareness is your best friend, not judgment. Because like I said, the only person who can judge you more than hurt you more is you. Your self-judgment, your idea, you're anticipating what somebody's thinking and feeling. I know what they're thinking. No, you don't. Are you in their brain? You're not. No, but I've known them forever. I know what they're thinking. Again, you don't. You've had historical history with how you've perceived it. That doesn't mean that you're living inside of somebody's brain. Stop thinking that that's a thing. So I really want you to sit with that. Because again, always remember, judgment isn't abnormal. But if you're trying to figure out someone and you start ridiculing them for their actions and behaviors, well, now we got to check ourselves. But if you look at a situation or a person, you say, okay, that doesn't align with me. It's really not true to my passion or to my heart or into my moral compass. Great. And then release it. And by the way, This could be somebody who used to be your best friend. Life was good. And then all of a sudden you feel as though they got brand new and they changed up on you, or your sister or your mom. And now you're like, I don't understand. They never used to be this way, but they are now. And I've said this once and I'll say it 100 million times. When you start your healing journey, there will be people who will not like it. They will judge it. They will almost hate it because you're going to be different. You're getting quote unquote brand new. So sometimes when you see somebody else and you think, oh my God, they flipped the script on me, fine. You don't have to like it. And that's important. When you humble yourself, you start to see people as beautiful humans. Do people make poor choices? Yes. Do bad things happen? Yes. Can you prevent all of that? You cannot. Acceptance. But there's beautiful people on this planet. Everybody isn't just out to get you. Just because you've had a couple bad relationships, couple bad friendships, doesn't mean that now all of a sudden you have to be the martyr for everybody and you have to make sure that you will never get hurt again. Because at the end of the day, you will stay isolated and you will stay alone. Because you will never open yourself up. But when you humble yourself and you allow yourself to be vulnerable, there is a high level of confidence and vulnerability. And I know you're like, huh? What? Yes. Because when you're vulnerable, you're open. You're willing to receive. If someone says something about you, and let's say it's true, own it. Sit with it. And if you go, oh God, I don't know if I could do that. Now that's self-judgment. And that's how judgment kind of circles back around to you. Right? And again, you have to be careful of that because just because you have that belief system doesn't make it right or wrong for another person. So when you get clear in that and you start understanding that you're not that other person, this person isn't supposed to live the way that you choose for them to. That's okay. That's okay. You know, a lot of times too, think of this, and it's important. When people are judging, they're basically avoiding dealing with themselves. Right? They might feel inferior to that person. They may feel like, oh my God, I wish I could have done that, but I would never do that. So very often when you're judging, you're just avoiding yourself. And if you think about this too, just when you judge, you're not getting what you need. I mean, you might be in that hot second, but you're never fully achieving it. So you're going to keep getting like, okay, this person owes me this, or okay, why is this person doing this? Now this is a cycle. You're in this cycle and you've created that narrative. And then it goes inward to self. So I want you to just sit with that and be very aware of when you're sitting in judgment, when you're trying to sit and understand somebody's why. It's one thing to say, I want to understand somebody's why so I understand how they operate, but do you really? Because if they tell you the why and you don't like it, now you're going to judge how they operate. So what you just said, you're now contradicting that. And you're contradicting that because now they give you the reason and you don't like it. Now you're going to judge that more. The only thing you need to do is when you're looking at something or some situation is does it align with you? Does it serve you in some way? Does it make you feel good? Does it, ask yourself those questions. For that, absolutely judge it. But don't judge the person and don't judge the situation itself as bad or good. Just does this align with me or does it not? And you've seen a lot of people go, well, I don't understand. How does that person have so many friends? Why are you in their business? So I want you to sit in awareness of it and also check yourself on your own self-judgment. Because when you're sitting in judgment of yourself, it can create such a difficult road for you. Because now you've created hurdles and obstacles based on what your idea of perfectionism is. But the reality is perfectionism is not a thing and it doesn't exist. It will never exist. Because it might be quote unquote perfect for you. That is not a golden standard of perfection. There is no golden standard of perfection. And you should never strive for that. You always strive for progress over perfection. So with that being said, I want you to be kind to yourself. I want you to be aware of your judgments. What are you, and again, no, don't judge your judgments, just be aware of them. And check yourself when you find yourself spiraling a little bit. That's why those 5 journals, make sure you go to the YouTube on the Positivity Experience. And there's 5 episodes. There's a series on the 5 journals and why it's so important because you're able to process the things in which you cannot release. So with that being said, Babies, don't judge yourself. You are imperfectly perfect, and you should have it any other way.
Check it out.